This page was created to teach Black history. Unfortunately, the American educational system was designed to exclude our real historical account, so we are here to dismantle it. It's time to enlighten those of us who have been kept in the dark. I too was a Black man who didn't know enough about our own history, so I began to dig deeper and do my own research. I want people of all races and cultures to join together to learn our history as one. Here, I will share all of my findings. Please share and support Teaching Black History. The story of Dred Scott. Dred Scott was born into slavery in 1799 in Southampton County, Virginia. It is not clear whether Dred was his given name. In 1818, Dred was taken by Peter Blow and his family, with their 5 other slaves, to Alabama, where the family ran an unsuccessful farm. The Blows gave up farming in 1830. Dred Scott was sold to Dr. John Emerson, a surgeon serving in the United States Army who planned to move to Illinois. After Scott learned this, he attempted to run away. His decision to do so was spurred by a distaste he had developed for Emerson. Scott was temporarily successful in his escape, but eventually he was captured in the Lucas swamps of Missouri and taken back. As an Army officer, Emerson moved frequently, taking Scott with him to each new Army posting. In 1837, Emerson took Scott to Fort Snelling in what is now known the state of Minnesota. There, Scott met and married Harriet Robinson, a slave owned by Lawrence Taliaferro. The marriage was formalized in a civil ceremony presided over by Lawrence, who was a justice of peace. Since slave marriages had no legal sanctions, supporters of Scott later noted that this ceremony was evidence that Scott was being treated as a free man. While on a steamboat on the Mississippi River, Harriet Scott gave birth to their first child. They later had a daughter and 2 sons, but neither son survived past infancy. The Emersons and Scotts returned to Missouri, a slave state, in 1840. Emerson died in the Iowa Territory in 1843. His widow inherited his estate, including the Scotts. In 1846, Scott attempted to purchase his family and his family's freedom, offering $300. Emerson refused his offer. Scott and his wife filed freedom suits to try to gain their freedom. The Dred Scott case of the U.S. Supreme Court denied Scott his freedom by ruling that African slave descendants were not U.S. citizens. It was the last in a series of freedom suits from 1846 to 1857 that began in Missouri courts. The Supreme Court overturned the lower court's rulings, which had upheld the precedent of once free, always free. Missouri had generally abided by the laws of free states and territories, which had held that a person voluntarily bringing a slave to that jurisdiction and staying for an extended period of time gave up their ownership of the slave. And if the slave achieved freedom in a free state, that freedom could be confirmed by the court after return to a slave state. Dred Scott had gained freedom for about 2 years, but it was overturned by the last decision of the Supreme Court. In 1846, having failed to purchase his freedom, Scott filed a freedom suit in St. Louis Circuit Court. Dred Scott was listed as the only plaintiff in the case, but his wife Harriet played a crucial role, pushing him to pursue freedom on behalf of their family. She was a frequent churchgoer, and in St. Louis, her church pastor, a well-known abolitionist, connected the Scotts to their first lawyer. The Scott versus Emerson case was tried in 1847 in the federal state courthouse in St. Louis. The verdict went against Scott as testimony that established his ownership by Miss Emerson was ruled to be hearsay, but the judge called for a retrial, which was not held until January 1850. This time, direct evidence was introduced that Emerson owned Scott, and the jury ruled in favor of Scott's freedom. Mrs. Emerson appealed the verdict. In 1852, the court overturned 28 years of precedent in Missouri. In 1853, Scott again sued for his freedom. After losing again in federal district court, the Scotts appealed to the United States Supreme Court in Dred Scott versus Sandford. The court had ruled that African Americans had no claim to freedom of citizenship. Since they were not citizens, they did not possess the legal standing to bring suit in a federal court. As slaves were private property, Congress did not have the power to regulate slavery in the territories and could not revoke a slave's owner's rights based on where he lived. This decision nullified the essence of the Missouri Compromise, which divided territories into jurisdictions either free or slave. Speaking for the majority, Taney ruled that because of Scott was considered the private property of his owners, he was subject to the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution, prohibiting the taking of property from its owner without due process. The Scott decision increased tensions between pro-slavery and anti-slavery factions in both North and South, further pushing the country towards the brink of civil war. Ultimately, after the Civil War, the 14th Amendment to the Constitution settled the issue of black citizenship via Section 1 of that amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdictions thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Following the ruling, the Scott family was deeded to Taylor Blow, who manumitted them on May 26, 1857. Scott worked as a porter in a St. Louis hotel, but his freedom was short-lived. He died from tuberculosis in September 1858.